Welcome back to Melville After Hours, and I was supposed to have a normal episode today, but some unexpected events led me to this moment right now, and just like last episode, my miracle repeats once again, as I'm humbled to bring on our school's math teacher, Mr. Schnettler. Come on down. Schnettler, I understand it's 2 p.m. on a Friday, and the last thing you want to do is speak to one of your geometry students for his Instagram talk show, but thanks anyway. So I think I should kick this off for the audience. Who are you?
So I am Mr. Schnettler. I am a math teacher here at Melville High School. Prior to this, I taught for 10 years at Murphy. I'm also the varsity wrestling coach here as well.
That's awesome. So as the head coach of our wrestling team here, what really goes on as being a head coach? What are the main roles and responsibilities you take on?
So with wrestling, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, not so much just the, stepping on the mat, wrestling and coaching the guys through some moves. Pretty much I'm invested in that all year long. It starts with the scheduling. Our schedule changes every year. We're setting up one-on-one dual meets with 6 to 8 teams every season. Additionally, we go to about 8 tournaments a year as well.
So tournaments during the season?
Tournaments are also during the season. So typically we wrestle on dual meets Wednesdays and Fridays during the week. We have our tournaments on Saturdays, and that takes us from about November until about January.
So on these tournaments, during these matches, what's like the breakdown of events that happens during the day? So
after school, typically either we're traveling to a visiting school or we have a school coming to us. When both schools arrive, we weigh everybody in. So typically for a varsity wrestling match, there's 13 matches. Every weight class has 1 match. So one person from Ward Melville will wrestle another person from another school, and they'll increase until we've done all of the weight classes. So we'll weigh in all of our wrestlers. After that, I will sit down with the other coach. We'll set up the matchups for the day. After that, we'll go our separate ways for about a half an hour. Visiting coach will go and warm up his team. I'll warm up my team downstairs in the wrestling room. We'll go up, and I hope that my boys can battle it out well enough to get the win.
And you're with them during the matches. You see them?
Yeah, so me and my coach, my assistant coach, will sit in the corner. We coach the wrestlers during the match, during breaks, things like that, try to make some minor adjustments, but for the most part, we just put our faith in their abilities.
Do you have them doing these moves and these different changes like during the match? Are you swinging it like in basketball or in football? You see them swinging at the players to sort of change their things up mid-game?
Yeah. I tend to make a fool out of myself a little bit. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a little bit animated, so you can see me on the sidelines, not only just telling my wrestlers what they should be doing, but also doing those moves to an inanimate object or an imaginary person, just trying to get my point across to them who they're not listening because they can't hear me with their headgear, but it's a little tough.
So getting specific here, going down into like the practices here, what really goes on during the practice days before the tournaments, before these games?
So practice is really like a 2-part series. We spend a lot of time focusing on the wrestlers' techniques and improvement. And then another aspect that goes into the sport of wrestling is weight management. So since there are 13 weight classes, part of my job is to make sure that all of my 13 starters get down to the appropriate weight class. So a practice for about 2 hours would look like a warm-up, then some high-intensity drilling where go over this move, practice it with your partner 5-10 times, practice this move. Now let's have a scrimmage. Now let's lose some weight. So it'll be a lot of running, a lot of cardiovascular stuff, a lot of plyometrics, things like that, trying to get the weight off. A lot of wrestlers in sweatpants, just trying to get their weight down.
But you want to be like the biggest guy on the mat. So why? What's the point of trying to cut down, trying to lose all this weight?
So if for example, you have your 101 pound weight class and then 108. So a wrestler who weighs 106 pounds, he has the option of either wrestling up at 108 or losing 5 pounds and wrestling down at 1. So common sense says, well, if I can lose 5 pounds, I'll be the biggest guy at 101 versus if I'm 2 pounds under the weight class already, I might be wrestling somebody who's coming down from 115 to 108.
So you can't wrestle down. You can only wrestle up if you're above the weight class.
Yes, the name of the weight class is the absolute heaviest you're allowed to be for that weight class. So that's what kind of brings a little bit of a strategy into
it. Now, I want to shift the momentum of this interview, and I mentioned this when I begged you to speak for 5 minutes. So speaking of you being a geometry teacher, you talk a big game of 3D shapes, and in your case, pyramids specifically. I'm incredibly aware of your obviously dying passion for conspiracy theories, more specifically how aliens built the pyramids. And your rant during class was way too much for me to pass up, which is why I did this interview in the first place. So please, the floor is yours, Mr. Schnettler. Go ahead.
So anybody who has had me as their teacher or has sat with me for more than a few hours at a time knows that I am a very big conspiracy theorist. And one of my main theories is that I am not 100% sold on the fact that the Egyptians built the pyramids.
Why?
It's the math and the technology that needed to go into building these pyramids, in my mind, is something that is unfathomable. I do not think that it is out of the realm of possibility that these pyramids were built by aliens. I feel that that is more of a possibility than the Egyptians building them, and that is a argued concept with everybody that I come across, and I will not adjust my
a small
stance.
group of aliens had more capabilities of building these monuments, these historical monuments, than millions, the same capabilities of the ancient slaves that built these back in the BCs.
I do. I believe that. And I know that there is a ton of support for the Egyptians. I have students, I have friends, I have family members that will constantly send me information like, hey, idiot, here is the proof that the Egyptians built. And it always comes back to the same thing. They built ramps, they had pulley systems, they wet the sand, they did this, that, and the other thing. And I just think that there is too much of an advanced technology that would have needed to be present that we have not uncovered yet, to be able to make these without that.
So how were these built? What goes on to the pyramids that you've researched before?
My thought process on the aliens building them, I do not know exactly how they were built. I believe that they were planted here at some point by the aliens. Now, I know that this sounds crazy. I know it sounds crazy.
Really?
My thought process is this, and again, I have absolutely no proof. I've done very minimal research on this, but I have found myself down the rabbit hole of Reddit at 4 a.m. trying to just come up with piece after piece to make it make sense. These are the most intricate pyramids ever created. If you look around the world, there are pyramids everywhere. All pyramids look man-made except for these.
What about them is different from like the ones in Mexico or the ones
They
in
are so intricately put together. So, for example, they are the Great Pyramid, the main pyramid of Giza, is so perfectly aligned with, or nearly perfectly aligned with true north, that it is within 1 degree of perfectly aligned with true north.
And you don't believe that's some sort of coincidence?
Now, again, is it possible that the Egyptian slaves were intelligent enough to figure this out? I don't know, because they talk about hundreds of thousands of Egyptian slaves putting together this pyramid.
6 hours later.
The only advanced civilization in the solar system, I think, is a little bit ignorant.
Right.
So that's my stance on it.
Now, around this time, I would ask you if you could draw a visual.
Yes.
I'm still having a hard time understanding this.
Using the same technology that we found to uncover this grand void, we've also recently were able to scan underneath the pyramids. And underneath the pyramids, okay, anybody who's in my geometry class knows how good I am now at drawing these pyramids. Okay, here's my pyramid. There is a vast excavated gap, okay, a vast emptiness that they are now kind of uncovering these very tall, like cylindrical wells, okay? And all of these wells, they're saying are up to 650 meters deep, okay? So let's think about that for a second. 650 meters deep is approximately, what, 1,900 feet? That's more than a quarter of a mile. Now, what I want to know is anyone who's ever dug a hole, at some point you got to jump in the hole to dig that dirt out. So you're telling me that all of these Egyptian slaves jumped into here to dig this hole, okay, thousands of them, hundreds of thousands of them, and then just wet the sand or created little steps to kind of crawl out of with their shovelfuls of dirt? I just don't buy the fact that without an advanced technology that the Egyptian slaves were able to excavate earth 1,900 feet deep.
1 million zillion jillion dillion cotillion times later.
About the Great Sphinx. Okay, so we have the Great Sphinx of Egypt.
Correct.
Okay, that's that big cat, lion, tiger in Egypt. Now, again, my timelines, I'm not a historian, although I do sound like one I know. But the Great Sphinx sits in Egypt, a desert. I am aware that it rains in the desert. However, when the Great Sphinx was discovered, there was no water to be found in Egypt. However, they have recently discovered an immense amount of water erosion outside the perimeter of the Great Sphinx, which provides slight evidence that when that Sphinx was created, there was water there. When the Egyptians were there, there was no water, but when the Sphinx was there, there was.
So the Sphinx and the pyramids, were they already there?
So
by the time the Egyptians...
That's what I think, because everyone's like, well, the slaves built it, the slaves built it. Well, my thought process is, what happens if the pharaohs kind of walked around like, yo, look at these great pyramids. No one's around. I wonder who built them. I have an idea. We built them. Slaves, you're going to tell everybody that you built these instead.
So the earliest version of slavery came from ancient Egypt.
Nailed it.
Wow.
That's just how I feel about it. And again, I have no evidence about this, and there is some evidence to support that through a pulley system and giant ropes and
Many unbearable moments later.
some sort of alien-like cell phone where we can contact them and be like, hey, we're pretty smart, come talk to us and show us your ways.
I'm pretty flabbergasted.
I know it sounds crazy, but there have been crazier ideas that have been proven right. This is just one of my many conspiracy theories.
That was a lovely visual. Thank you so much. That was amazing. And I have nothing else to say. So I think we might just have to end it off with that wonderful visual.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for coming on. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great night.